So, this is Kal Kat, the Calcaster, and this is a review of Star Trek Discovery, Episode 7, Unification 3. This is an episode where we go to Navarre. I thought it was Navage, but it's Navarre. It'd be funny if it was Navage, because then it would be the nasal cleaning universe. That'd be very, very Orville of them to call it that, Navage. The premise of the story is that they've isolated where the burn happened, or at least possibly where it happened, and that there was a top secret SB-13, which also sounds like a medicine, warp drive the Vulcans and Romulans that were united 100 years earlier were testing. They think they're responsible, so they left and informed the planet Navarre, I guess, but they're unified. That planet looks more it's more terrestrial looking than usual. They mentioned the Kalvanat, the women warriors and stuff. And they mentioned they show footage of Leonard Nimoy's character Spock talking about unification. So it is a direct sequel to the other two. Calling it Unification 3 is kind of silly though, because the audience watching Discovery is not necessarily the audience watching Next Generation. So they're going to be like, how does that time trap even work? I mean, Spock never mentioned his sister in the Next Generation timeline. So did he say something similar in this Discovery timeline? Because it's not the Prime timeline. It's not. Because of the sister being there. Also, last week I almost gave it away. Who the Cult Navarre's lady is. Yeah, well, spoilers for this review. It's Burnham's mother. Gotta quit giving things away. I won't give away next week. All this. So it turns out that the data may not indicate the Navarre at all. So they have a meeting to discuss at a quorum. Which is not a trial, it's a quorum. The second and third acts are very... or in Star Trek, because it would have been the fifth and sixth act. Because they're 45 minutes long, roughly, episodes. It got soap opera and emotional and stuff. But the most emotional part was the part to see Leonard Nimoy's character again on a hologram thing. But that was early on. They probably should have called it Reunification Redacted, maybe, or Reunification Reboot, or something like that. But 3 is just odd. It is cool that it does tie in with that TNG episode, which said, well, it'll either take centuries or 1,000 years. Well, it has been, roughly 600 years as the Next Generation. And he didn't come back from the time warp thing. Well, he did in Cillian Space. In our Cillian Space stories, it runs parallel with the Everson timeline in a way. The J.J. Abrams timeline, which this kind of is, except it's kind of its own thing because it's the Kurtzman timeline where Vulcan was not destroyed. It's the Kurtzman timeline. So is Picard. It's the Kurtzman timeline. But in the Everson timeline, Spock was dying and stuff. So this affected the future of the Cillian space. So in the Cillian universe, they go back and they rescue him. They send the Chimera and the Ventura back in time to rescue Spock and bring him back to the Next Generation. Around the time of the 2390s, early 2390s. Because it's affecting the timeline, so they bring him back. He dies anyway of old age, but then this Q-like entity of V'ger regenerates him and all of the old crew who are dying or have died into a sort of nexus kind of thing, where the old Star Trek crew are immortalized forever within the geostructure of this robot thing, kind of like golems, and they're in there in the computer simulation. But here, that's not the case. That's Cillian Space. So Spock does come back in Cillian Space, and he wouldn't recognize Burnham because he'd be like, "Who's that? I do not have a sister. That is highly illogical. I have a brother." Yes, we have Vulcan, the heretic brother guy, Lawrence Luckenbill's character from Star Trek V, who was never mentioned. I have a half brother. Well, technically, yeah. So the mother shows up as one of the Kalvanat. Yeah, so half Vulcan, half Klingon. No, she's not. But it was okay. They put the quorum in the meeting room because where else would they put it? They didn't want to build another set, so it's a bottle show. It's a show that's entirely filmed on a ship. And the Planet show is one. Planet Hell show is a show that's filmed on a planet or a soundstage. Somewhere in there between there is soundstage, which is Planet Hell. But yes, that's Next Generation jargon, way back in the day. So. The two stories that I wrote were DS9 and Voyager. The DS9 one was a bottle show, and so was the Voyager one, really. They didn't land on a planet. There was a brief visit to a planet in the DS9 one. And in the rewrite that eventually made it to screen, which at that point was rewritten so many times they couldn't give me credit. They were on a planet for most of that episode, so they completely changed it. Made it easier for them to just put them on location on a planet. Do that. Instead of making it about the ship, put all the action on the planet. All right. Anyway, so so it became a planet show. In this case, we have the Vulcans, though, and it was Vulcans and Romulans united. They don't mention the Tal Shiar, really. Kind of do. This is after Picard show. A lot of the guesses for this episode for Trek Yars was kind of there, but kind of not. They did hide the mother character coming back. Well, I think that she still is somehow her own mother, but maybe not. I mean, that's just Red Dwarf coming out. Anyway, so it's a TV show, Red Dwarf. I mean, considering it's another series entirely, why not just call it Unification or Unifications with an S? Contextifications. No. They had a lot of wordy episodes earlier. Although they have a few people from the Pineal Cillian here writing for this. Not me, but other people writing for this episode. So we've got some people who are on the same wavelength. There were a lot more of us on Lower Decks, so. Lower Decks, yeah. Anyway, so I think that's pretty much it for my description of the episode. I mean, it was fine. It was fine. Yeah. It was, they visit Vulcan, basically, and yeah. So that's pretty much it. We'll watch the episode. Yeah. They argue about her status and stuff, and then they have a bait and switch with the information they need. And the backstory is they promoted Tilly because, sure, kind of like they promoted her, kind of like they did in with Kirk in the Abrams universe. As I can tell, it's an Abrams universe spin-off in a way, because they just decided that she should be a first officer on the engineering. Yeah, even though that you would never do that in the chain of command. You would never say the ensign is suddenly field promoted to commander. That doesn't happen. However, I had a dream last night where they promoted Wesley. Yes. But I think they already kind of did that. Miss Wesley Crusher. He would be a captain by now. He'd be like 50. Anyways, so yeah. He'd almost be a rear admiral almost. Well, Picard was a captain at 50. So by season 3, he was 50. He's playing someone older, though. Patrick Stewart's character was actually 47 when he played the character of Picard, but he was playing someone in their 60s. Or late 50s, probably 57. He's playing somebody 10 years older. Which makes the other one confusing because, like, they established his birth date as 2305, so by 2395 he'd be 2399 he'd be like 94. But yeah, That's old. I don't think he'd be doing much after that. They had to make him into a robot or a golem or something. So he took on the responsibility of Data in the pre-order show and became like the vessel for their weird colony thing. Or that'd probably never be mentioned again in season 2. Just he's alive. Yes, well, just won't mention that he's a robot. Yes. Just won't bring it up. And that Romulan guy we left behind, we didn't bring him up either. Yeah, ever again. He just disappeared out of the story, literally. Well, the Silly Track 1, they referenced that. Well, he just disappeared. Anybody seen him? I don't know. Yeah, so... But as for the unification idea, that's kind of cool. I think it would have happened earlier than that, but...